Welcome back to For Self-Examination. I am your host, Dr. Christopher Taylor, and I am here with one of the greatest CEOs on the planet in this quadrant of the Omega Galaxy. No, that's not it. I'm trying to think of Buzz Lightyear. What is it from Buzz Lightyear? I don't remember. But Travis Richards, CEO of Katco, which he explained to me what they do one time, and I really forgot it.
Yeah.
But I know it's important.
It is important. It is very important. You know, it's one of the big unlocks that we had at this company was whenever we realized what we did. It only took me about, 10 well, it only took me about 10 years of working here before I really figured that out. So this is a family business in that my grandfather founded the company. It is not a family business in the sense that, like, a lot of my friends that are multi-generational people, they grew up in the business, they worked there in the summers, this and that. I got out of the Air Force and I came to work here with my dad and my brother. My first day, my dad sat me down in the conference room and he brought in the product, which is a catalytic heater, which is the main thing that we make. And he's like, "This is a catalytic heater. This is what it does." And so it was, so anyway, so there was that. But for a long time, we always just thought that, hey, we make heaters, right? Somebody said, "Hey, what do you do?" We make heaters. And we really, there was a couple of things that kind of unlocked a broader understanding of what we really do. And the way that people use our heaters, I won't bore people with the details of it, but basically natural gas, when it's coming out of the ground, it can get stuck. We have a heater that prevents equipment from freezing and it keeps gas flowing. And so the 2021 storm, when there was a lot of people that were without electricity, there's a lot of people that still were able to maintain their gas service and, stay warm. And that was something that was really important. And we were doing a little business with some folks that were in the Ukraine whenever the war between Ukraine and Russia started out. And we got a message from these guys saying, hey, this project obviously has been kind of put on the back burner, but we're going to need to rebuild this country whenever the war is over. And, so we'll get back with you then. And so we recognize that really what we are in the business of is that we are in the business of empowering people through energy resilience. Without our product, it's just like, hey, people don't, get their gas, people don't get, electricity that's generated. And so that is what we do, is that we help people we help keep energy flowing, we keep the lights on. And so work has gotten more fun since we have had a little bit of a broader understanding of what we do. Rather than we make heaters, it's just like, hey, we are in the business of energy resilience, which is an important thing in our society.
That is a very important thing.
Yeah.
So now every time I flip the light switch, I'm going to think of you. I'm going to be like,
you should be like, thank God somebody's got those catalytic heaters out there keeping these lights working right.
Edison and Travis will put
That's
you in
right.
right
Yes.
next to each other.
Right next to each other.
That's great. All right, so the title of the movie of your life is Drive On. What does that mean? Tell us about that.
Well, so Drive On, it was like whenever I was you and I have this in common. We were both cadets whenever we were at school at A&M, and we have one of the mantras of the unit that I was in was Drive On, and so we had like signs up in the like you see Notre Dame, they play like a champion, they'd hit the sign. We had signs up in our dorm that said Drive On, and so we'd hit the sign as we're walking out the door, and so that was something that always just kind of, I guess that's what planted the seed, but. Really, it's like, I think that life works better for me whenever I sort of keep my focus on what's out in front of me rather than looking in the rearview mirror. And so, whatever's going on, it's like, hey, dude, let's drive on. Let's persist. Let's keep going. Let's keep things moving. And so I have there's literally a sign for Christmas. My dad made me kind of a replica of one of those signs that we had up in the dorm. And so I've got one in my office. And I've got this little thing. I don't know if you can see it. It says Drive On that I wear or whatever, just a little thing to help me remember. Yeah.
We have, hold on, let me grab it. This is so cool. So one of our buddies, her dad was he makes stuff out of wood. I don't know what you call that.
Carpenter.
Craftsman.
Woodworker? A woodworker.
Woodwork craftsman, yeah. And he made us these little Cecil guys.
Oh,
so
nice,
This was our unit mascot, and ours was easy come, easy go. But we had these two ideas. We had these two ideologies that lived in tension with each other, and that was easy come, easy go, and intensity. And those were the signs that we hit every day when we were freshmen.
Yeah, that's right, man. Walking through, you hit the sign.
For those of you listening that have never been to Texas A&M or don't know about the Corps Cadets, Feel free to give me a call.
That's
I'll
right.
clue you in on the crazy 4 years of my life.
That's right. This podcast is not long enough to go into the details of,
I think
of
you
what
have
that is like.
Just a podcast on that, really.
Oh, geez, no, I
just
don't know
fish
if
life,
anybody.
man. That was
I don't know if
bad.
anybody wants to listen to that one, man. It's my wife, Crystal. She went to A&M. We were there at the same time. We didn't know each other at the time, but she had no connection with any of that stuff about the ROTC program and the Corps Cadets and the Aggie Band and all the stuff that I was a part of. And so sometimes I, sort of tell her stories about, oh yeah, like I kind of forgot we used to do this thing. Like this is the way that we would eat dinner or wake up in the mornings and this and that. And she just looks at me like I am a complete. Like I am absolutely insane, and she is not wrong. She is not wrong. It was a lot of fun, but it was all very silly. It was very silly.
Yeah. I will never forget the first breakfast I had at the Corps Cadets, like in Duncan, like when they said battalion attention, and just like, oh man.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oof, that was an intense moment.
A whole deal. It's a whole deal.
All right, so drive on. I love this idea because I think we currently, as a society, have a really big problem with anxiety and depression. I think these are very much on the rise. And I think from a hierarchy of needs, it makes sense as we
totally
kind of move up in society. And we're constantly looking for validation and reassurance. And I think, depression lives in the rearview mirror, right? It lives in the past, and anxiety lives beyond the map. So, you can't really see beyond, the road. So you get anxious about what's beyond there. How has this really played out in your life? What are some big moments for you?
Well, so I think that you're right about how I think overall it's a very good thing that we are collectively, I think, as a society, paying a little bit more attention to and having a little bit more reverence for our pasts. I think that that's a good thing. You can easily get hung up on it. I think that's a trap that most of us have experience of, kind of falling into that loop. And my wife and I, we do a lot of counseling ourselves, and we were talking about this one day, is that, that stuff in the past, it's great to be like, hey, like onward, let's move forward, drive on. It's hard to do that until you really sort of acknowledge and experience whatever it was that happened in the past. Like, I think that it's a really healthy thing to be like, okay, so what, now what, right? Like what's next? What am I going to do about it? It's hard to get to that point where you have that agency to be like, okay, what am I going to do about this, whatever situation it is? It's hard to get to that place if you don't actually sort of experience and feel the feelings of whatever that was, kind of in the past. And so, so anyway, I mean, as far as experience with that, there's, certainly there's, everybody's lived life and they know that it comes with its share of challenges. I've had a handful of those, went through a divorce when I was, younger, and that was a real big challenge in a lot of ways. And, it's like, it's kind of this weird dichotomy. Like you can be grateful for the lessons that you have learned and still like not be glad that something happened. You know what I mean? It's like there's that's a part of my past, and I would say that in many ways was certainly the most formative time in my life. I think certain is the very thankfully that is the toughest thing that I've had to go through, and so if that's number one on your list of tough stuff or whatever, then that's probably a sign that you've lived a pretty good life, and so. Grateful for that, but still it was a really hard thing to go through. And I do remember as I was in it, I remember that I would, I was doing a lot of, I was doing a lot of counseling and getting some therapy to process, all of this as I was going through it. And part of that, I was doing a lot of like writing. I had these like spiral notebooks where I would just like, I'd be awake in the middle of the night, couldn't think, just like my head's just going crazy. And I would just write, and sort of process all of these feelings. And as I would do that, and then I would get to the point where I would almost like be sick of listening to myself like go through that, right? Where it's like, well, look, like at some point you reach that spot where where you're sort of, it's like, okay, it's all out. I've gotten it out. And I remember the way that I remember it, whenever I was writing those things, I would get to that point, I kind of stop, skip a line, and I would start out that next sentence with like, okay, so what are you going to do? And I would like do in capital letters, underline, what are you going to do? And so that's kind of where like, I think sort of this, it's tough. Like, obviously I don't, certainly going through a divorce, most people don't have that's not a fun thing. Don't recommend it to anybody. But it is kind of weird that I look back sort of at that time in my life almost kind of fondly, because it's a really empowering feeling to think back to that feeling where, hey, look, you're going through it. You're, literally, I'm filling up pages of just emotion of all of these things that I'm going through as I'm going through this really challenging time. But I do remember very fondly that getting to that next line and being like, okay, So what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Underline, 3 underlines under. What are you going to do? And that feeling, man, it's like that's a powerful thing. I think that was a time where it, kind of an inflection point, I would say, where since that time, I think I have been a much more proactive person, and I have had a much higher regard for my agency as a human being. And that is something that has certainly served me well. You kind of get to see who you are whenever you're in a tough situation. And I'm glad to say that I look back. Didn't, certainly made mistakes and didn't do everything 100% right, but look back with a great deal of pride with how I handle myself. And that was a big part of it, sort of capturing that agency and always keeping focused on okay, there's a lot about this I can't control. What can I control? What are you going to do?
No, I mean, that's exactly it, right? There's so much that's just outside of our control.
Always.
There are only thoughts and things, and
Yep.
we have no control over things. So,
Well, it's, and this is like one of our, like you mentioned, I'm running this company, and we have, our values as a company, and the first of our values, and, kind of first among equals of our values, we call it proactivate. It's like taking the concept of being a proactive person and turning it into a verb. And that's sort of the first expectation that we have of people. And it's like, when we explain this to people, that's the first thing that we clarify, is that it's like, there is all of this stuff that is happening around you. You have control over one thing, your choices, and that is it. You have no control over anything else. And to the degree that you focus on what you have control over, your choices, your ability to influence those things around you will expand and grow. Yep. The extent to which you focus on the things you don't have control, your ability to influence those things will shrink and die. And so it's like, that's the thing, man, is that it's just like, you've got to focus on what you can control. And it's like, it's kind of a freeing thing to realize that you can't control circumstances or other people, and you just giving yourself the freedom to only focus on that little tiny, infinitesimally small piece of this universe that you have control over. It is kind of a freeing thing. And so that's the deal, man. That's a powerful concept. All of us, I think, could get better at leveraging what I think is that reality.
Yeah, just this is just beyond my control. There's nothing I can do about it. All I can do is decide how I choose to respond.
Absolutely.
Decide what my choices
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
I love that. Well said. So I want to jump backwards and talk about the Air Force. What was that like?
Ooh. So I was a freshman at A&M on September the 11th, and people, and so like I'd been in school for a couple of weeks. As I mentioned earlier, it's like I was a cadet, which means that I was like in the ROTC program. Without getting into too much details, this is like what I really wanted to do. Like, my dad and my older brother had been in the Aggie band, which was like, I was a band kid in high school. I enjoyed being in the band, and this was kind of this family legacy thing that I wanted to do. And if you wanted to be in the band at A&M, you got to be in ROTC. So I was, but I had no intention of joining the military. Of course, like most 18-year-old kids, I had no idea what I was going to do. But then September 11th happened, and the way that I remember it is that, it was a Tuesday, and then the next day, a Wednesday, was walking to church, across the street from campus, and just thinking to myself, and this was like a crazy time. It's weird to think back about this now, on September the 12th, 2001, I thought to myself, it was a legit thing of like, this could be the beginning of like World War III. I have no idea, especially if you're an 18-year-old that's not into geopolitics. It was really scary. And I thought to myself there, and the thing I remember thinking, if you've ever seen the movie Patton, whenever at the beginning of the movie, when he's giving they're recounting the speech that he gave to the Third Army, during World War II, one of the lines is, he's saying, he's like, hey, well, one day you're going to have sitting by your fireside, and you'll have your grandson on your knee, and he's going to ask you, Granddad, what did you do in the Great World War II? He's like, well, you won't have to say I was shoveling crap in Louisiana. He's like, and I remember thinking that, of just being like, dude, I don't know what's going to happen, but I did feel very compelled to serve. And so that was the day that I decided, I was like, I don't know what this means. I'm going to join the military. Whenever I get out of here, it's like, I'm going to join. And so I considered joining the Army, considered joining the Air Force. The Air Force, pretty much all of my friends were joining the Air Force, and so I decided to do that one. Seemed just as good as anything else. Yeah. And so after I graduated, I ended up joining the Air Force. I had an opportunity to fly, which I wasn't actually. It's weird to think back, man. It's like I had having an opportunity to be a pilot. That was like the thing that all of like if
Oh,
you
yeah,
were if you were like I mean it's like if you were one of the best cadets, you were going to be a pilot.
Oh yeah.
I didn't actually want to be a pilot. I wanted to be considered to be one of the best, and so I was like, well, this is what the best people are doing, so I should try to be a pilot too.
Yeah.
I had no interest in being a pilot. And so I got a slot to fly, and I ended up turning it down. It just wasn't a good. I was not. The reality of that is that it would have required me, committing to the Air Force for, probably about a dozen. Yeah, I mean, reality probably about a dozen years. I was engaged at the time, and the woman that I was going to be marrying, she didn't have a career. This is before remote work was a thing, and she was not pursuing a career that would have been really compatible with like, we're going to be in the military and pick up and move every 2 or 3 years. And I ended up, if at the time it was the right decision for my family to pass up that opportunity. And I was like, well, I'll go and I'll serve and I'll pay back. I'll do my 4 years and then, I'll get out after that. And so I ended up being a satellite operator.
That's cool.
Well, it was cool, and it's like the other thing too. This is another thing that's interesting about the military is that. Whenever you sign up, you just kind of have to do whatever they tell you. And that was not something that I really aspired to do. I just kind of ended up as they're like, hey, you're in the Air Force. You have to do what we tell you to. We need these space and missile officers. And so you're going to go do that. I was a satellite operator, which turned out to be a really cool career. And I did that for about 6 years in Denver, Colorado. And, got to participate in some really cool missions, and it was a good thing, and it's something that to this day I'm always very proud that I served, and it means at the time that this happens I'll be dead, and so it won't matter to me at the time, but it does mean a lot to me now while I'm still alive that whenever I pass away, dude, they'll drape my casket in the red, white, and blue, and I will always be awesome. A veteran, and so that's something that is that's something that's a source of pride. I'm really glad that I did that.
That's so amazing.
Yeah.
So follow-up question.
Yeah.
Are aliens real? Did you encounter any aliens with your satellite operations?
No comment. I can neither confirm nor deny. It's,
no comment, he says. Oh, boy, juicy.
So a couple of years ago, Crystal, my wife, she and we went back to Colorado. I hadn't been back to my old Air Force base, which is now a Space Force base, which is kind of a weird thing. But
Space Force now. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but a friend of mine that I served with, he was taking command of the squadron that we used to serve in, which was kind of a cool thing. We were idiot kid lieutenants. Now he's a lieutenant. He was a lieutenant colonel at the time. He's since been promoted to full colonel. But we got to do like a tour, and so Crystal got to see a lot of the stuff that was like the mission that we did. And afterwards, she was kind of like irritated with me a little bit. She's just like, "This is actually super cool." It's like the only thing that you ever told me about your service is that. It's like, I was like a satellite nerd in the Air Force. That was my thing. Yeah. And it was like, how come you didn't tell me about any of this? And I was like, honestly, it's because I can't remember like what's classified versus what's not. And so it's just easier to just not talk about any of it than risk, saying something that I agreed that I wouldn't divulge. And so anyway.
All right. What are a couple things that you took with you through that experience as an officer in the Air Force?
It's I would say that some of the stuff that I took with me, I feel like I was pretty well prepared to be an officer. One of the things that they did, as we mentioned before, a lot of the cadet experience at A&M was very silly. But one of the things that they did really instill to you was how to be a good teammate and how to put your team first. And when I was a very young officer, I was a second lieutenant. This guy that was my deputy flight, he was just a couple years older than me. But he's kind of given me a little bit of mentorship, and he told me this, and it really aligned with what my experience was from, kind of that team first attitude. And he said, "Dude, being an officer, this is like the easiest job. You just got to take care of your people. He's like, if you do that, it's like the rest of it is easy. But if you just focus on that, then you'll be golden, and you'll be miles ahead of a lot of the other officers that you encounter." And so it was interesting, especially like part of, there was a lot of people that I served with that they were very interested in doing what was right for their career, because they had intentions of staying of staying in for a long time. And so they were all like, I served with tons of great people, and it's not like these people were bad, but always in the back of their mind, I think, was like, I've got to do, like, they're not like looking out for number one, but in the back of their mind, they're like, hey, I have to make the choices that are going to be right for my future advancement.
Right, yeah.
Meanwhile, my intention was to get out after 4 years. And so like, I just kind of didn't care about any of that. And it was interesting. I sort of ended up by kind of not trying and by only focusing on like, hey, dude, I don't care about anything about that. I just want to take care of try to do my best to take care of my people, which I certainly did not do flawlessly. But I think that attitude, it kind of led me, like, there's some of these people that for their career, it would have been really good if they had gotten this opportunity or gotten this job or gotten whatever. And instead they're giving it to me, even though it was like, hey, I don't have a career, like I'm not going to stay in for a career after this. And so I ended up having a lot of, I guess kind of success as an officer. I was only in for 6 years, and so that was not a ton of time to, probably not a long enough time to be able to say how well that could have gone for me. But as I look back, it's like, hey, I was kind of good at it, and I think that was the reason, is that that one bit of advice and just kind of that team first, like, dude, just take care of your people and it'll all work out.
I love that, because I think we have definitely fallen into a culture of overperformance. We see a lot of kids in counseling right now in high school and college that are just grinding themselves into just dirt, because they are constantly, you can't even have a 4.0 anymore. It's got to be like a 4.5 or like 5.0 to get considered for a major college. And then colleges are now harder and harder to get into, so you have to have more extracurriculars. So I guess what I'm getting at is that we seem to have like pushing a lot of pressure on our youth that they have to be good at excelling. And what I love what you're saying is sort of like the opposite of like, well, no, you'll excel if you stop trying to.
Yeah. And so this is just another anecdote, and just to give everybody a little bit of perspective on the spectrum of like how big of a deal this is. This is like at the low end of the spectrum. And so I'm not saying this, like, this is no kind of a brag, but like I said, I was only in for 6 years. So this is like one of the best things that I got, but
no medal of honor, no medal.
Yes, this is, I didn't get any like cool medals. I just got the medals that you sort of are like, hey, congratulations, you've been in the military for 4 years. Here's this medal that you get, whatever. So that was you
got some ice cream, and you got to meet the president.
Didn't do. Neither of those things were true. Nobody gave me. I didn't even get the ice cream level medals, right? But to that point is that it's like, so before you get commissioned as an officer, if you're going through ROTC in the Air Force, I don't know if they still do this, but we used to do this thing where they would send you to an Air Force base, and they would just kind of run you through the ringer. They would, put you through these stressful situations, and you had these officers that were there watching you and kind of like grading you based on your leadership potential. And so it was called field training. That's what we called it. I don't know if it's called something else, and if they are even doing it now. But you go in, and on your whenever you first get there, you meet with this captain who's the officer that's in charge of you, and they like ask you like, hey, what are your goals for while you're here? And so I go in, I do this interview, and I don't even remember what I said exactly. Something to the effect of like, hey, I do remember that I was like, hey, I want to reflect well on my detachment. Like, I want to people like, I was, coming from A&M, and that was something I was really proud of. And I was like, I want to reflect really positively on Texas A&M. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I want our group and our flight to, succeed. And I want everybody to, I just want to, I want the team to win. And so we go through, you're there for 4 weeks or 5 weeks or something. And then at the end, they give you an out briefing. And like a lot of things in the military, they just rank you. There's like 30 of us, and they just like rank you at the end of like, you number 1, number 2, number 30, whatever. And so I get to the end, and I actually turns out that I did really well. I finished second in our flight, and which was a cool thing. And when I was doing my out briefing with that same captain that had interviewed me at the beginning, she's like, when I asked you your goals at the beginning, it's like, you were literally the only person in this flight that did not say that they wanted to finish in the top third of the group. Like, you were the only person that didn't say that you had a target of like where you wanted to end up. Again, I thought that was kind of like, of course I wanted to do well, but I'm just kind of like, dude, who says that? I don't know. It was kind of an interesting thing, but that was another deal where it was like, that probably kind of informed some of my thoughts is when after I got commissioned, where I was just like, hey, this whole team first thing, man, I think that there's something to it. But, the performative thing, and I don't have kids my friends that do, and especially those of my friends that have kids that are sort of getting to that age where they're starting to have to think about going to college or they're getting accepted. I mean, dude, it is a great deal of pressure. It's so competitive, and you're asking these kids to start executing against this kind of punch list of, if you want to get into a good college, you got to do this, and this. From the time that they're like seventh graders, I'm just like, seems like something that is not good. I don't know, man. It's like, what's the solution? Do you have a fix for this, by the way? Like, I mean,
yeah. So Henry's 6, and he started kindergarten this year, and we're already working on college applications.
Yeah, about to say, dude. It was like, did he get into a good kindergarten?
Yeah. He brought home a smiley face on his report card, and we were like, no, sir, it better be an ecstatic face.
Yeah.
No, he's got 7 after-school activities now. I don't know what the solve is. I know that we have made things a lot more competitive, which in a lot of ways is natural. If you want to be, in order to get into a really good school, you got to be in top 10, right? Top 10% or whatever of your class, right? And so now all of a sudden we're telling everybody that you have to aspire to be top 10. Our workforce has decided that high school applications or high school degrees aren't as valuable anymore. So we're pushing people to get more bachelor's degrees. I mean, I would be very interested in exploring a more of a trade alternative to high school where sometime around like the 10th grade you can elect, instead of saying, hey, college isn't for me, I don't really want to do that, my dad's a plumber, or I want to be a tradesman, or I want this skill set. And I think you just go do that and just learn that skill really well. I just don't think we all need to go to college. And the college experience is changing a lot too.
Yeah. I think that's true, and I think that certainly from our perspective of my perspective of look, I'm running a business and I'm hiring, we're hiring people and looking at that. There was something that is kind of interesting about the evolution of our society. What college used to be was that it was this shorthand for because you have been to college, I can just kind of this degree answers a lot of the questions that I would have had to really thoroughly investigate, through the process of looking into. Yeah. And so now, but there are certain skills that are out there where this guy that's doing, this super talented guy that's doing marketing for us that we hired a couple of years ago. I will be honest with you, I don't even I think he went to college. I don't even know if he went to college, but because it's like what we were looking for is that we wanted, it's like I was interested in his portfolio. I was like, dude, show me the stuff that you have created. And I think that there is I think that is kind of a better shorthand than what the college degree used to be. And so I think that for a lot of the, a lot of things that are sort of out there, there are other ways besides a college degree. I think we have many more outlets now to communicate that same thing that the college degree used to, that is like, hey, I am capable of doing this. Instead of presenting this piece of paper, just present examples of like, hey, here's this stuff that I have created. Yeah. And, that's better proof than, I took some classes in it or whatever, and it's like, okay, So, anyway, it probably doesn't apply to counseling, I would assume. It's like I think that our doctors and our engineers and those folks should probably continue to get the college education. I think I definitely believe that there are some skill sets that require a higher level of training and development. And I mean, I don't know that you necessarily need to have a master's degree to be a mental health professional. I know there's some avenues like licensed chemical dependency counselors where all you need is a bachelor's degree. Yeah. But how much of that is skill versus just a specialized form of education? Could there be an avenue where you just get a bachelor's degree in mental health care and that's enough? I don't know. I think those are all just big questions, but I don't really have an answer for any of them. What I do know is that the robots are going to replace us all. And I hope that they start with just me, Well, no, that's a joke for all my lawyer friends. You guys know I love you. Yeah. But, I do think that I think that, especially as I look at a lot of the evolution of what's going on with technology, including, all of these really cool, tools that I'm like, super interested. There's a lot of AI stuff that's really cool that can enhance your capability. Big force multiplier, can, help you do better and higher levels of the work that you were already working on, and that certainly is more true for some careers than it is for others. But I think that what I think that the winners are going to be are the ones that like honestly, if I did have a kid and they were going to school or they wanted to study, I would encourage them to pursue some kind of a path that turned them into really good critical thinkers, and also gave them a very deep understanding of the way that the world works. Like a good deep, kind of like sort of what a classical education used to be in terms of like understanding, math and science at very fundamental levels, and then use that as a really good foundation. But on top of that, build on, studying great thinkers and literature and art, to, really, help you become a really good, thoughtful, critical thinker. And anyway, it's interesting because I think I don't get the impression that that's what a lot of the college experience these days, and even the high school and, education experience is very geared towards almost like vocation. Not necessarily in the sense of like a trade of what you're talking about, but as I look around and, in my very casual observations of what my friends' kids are studying and what, the local schools here are teaching and all that, there's a very high emphasis on, people doing, robotics and STEM stuff or whatever, which is very cool and very important. But I'm like, man, there still is a place for, civics and, literature and the hard sciences, sort of at a more fundamental level, rather than their application. So, Anyway, it's complicated issues, man. I don't know that you and I. No one is at. I'm waiting on the call for someone to call and say, hey, Travis, we really need you to step in and answer some of these questions for us. But
I hope nobody ever calls me to answer any of those questions.
Well,
terribly ill-equipped. Okay, final question for you, friend.
Sure.
You got to choose. You got to have dinner with the Avett brothers or Matthew McConaughey.
I would say Matthew McConaughey. I admire the Avett brothers' music very much, and I do really enjoy that. But I think that I know little of the Avett brothers aside from their music, right? And so I don't know. I don't have a long list of things that I would really like to just kind of talk to them about, pick their brain on.
Jam with.
Yeah. Well, it's like if I was a good musician and it was like, hey, dude, you could go jam with these guys, maybe that would be a different story. But McConaughey, he certainly puts a lot of his thoughts and philosophy out into the world, and I think that he is a super interesting guy, and I think that he is he comes across to me as being very sincere, and so I think that. He's a little bit of a cartoon sometimes, but I never very animated, but I don't. I do think that he's a very sincere person, and anyone, regardless of how closely their views or thoughts align with my own, if you can sit down with somebody that's a really thoughtful and sincere person, I think that that's always a really interesting conversation. And so, don't know enough about the Avett brothers to know whether or not. They fit that bill, and so I do think McConaughey checks the box. I would love to sit down and talk with him. Maybe at maybe I'll get a chance to run into him at an upcoming book launch or something.
Yeah, maybe that'd be amazing. All right, so the Avett brothers' favorite quote of yours is "Decide what to be and go be it."
Decide what to be and go be it. That's right. That's one that resonates with me. Certainly in January, like New Year's resolutions and all that. It's just. That one kind of pops up for me this time of year to think like, all right, hey, decide what to be and go be it. I think that's good advice for all of us.
Well, thank you so much, CEO extraordinaire Travis Richards, Katco, and student of life.
Always.
We appreciate your time and your thoughts. My name is Dr. Christopher Taylor. I am your host. I hope you've enjoyed these thoughts for your self-examination.
Thanks, buddy.